Hello and welcome to Breaking Embargo. I'm Peter Barnes, and that's Fariza Belgian Beaver. Let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining us, Fariza. I have absolute no doubt that I butchered that pronunciation.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I was so looking forward to this.
Oh, not a problem, not a problem. For those who don't know, Fariza is an up-and-coming commentator, somebody I admire greatly. I think she's got a bright future ahead of her. She's also a producer and assistant producer over at Talk, and we work together quite a lot, really, don't we? We see each other pretty much every other day at this point. What I really wanted to dive straight in with you is, I kind of fell into this world. I'm a political guy. I'm a corporate guy more than anything else. I never really wanted to be in front of the camera. You seem very voluntarily eager to put yourself out there at an age when people aren't just they're taking out with headshots. There's a brutal outrage culture that we live in. And for you to kind of put your head above the parapet and say, I believe in this is admirable, but certifiable. Are you okay?
I'm all right. Some may say I'm a little bit insane, but I think I've decided this path for myself because I want to talk about stuff that matters. And I was actually thinking before, maybe print journalism is more for me. But then I started doing TikToks and all sorts of stuff, and I realized maybe some people actually care about what I have to say. And I realized that especially when you're passionate about something, and it's so important to be able to stick to your views, even if they're unpopular. And some might say that you're absolutely crazy or stupid. What do you know? You're like a baby. But realistically, I think young people are so aware and so well informed nowadays about politics and what goes on in the world because of social media. I think it's absolutely vital for us to speak out about what we think is great and what we think is
And
bad.
I couldn't agree more with young people in particular. Very much of yourself, really. I don't really have an agenda, despite what anybody thinks. People ask me a question, I'm going to just give you an answer. My favorite thing is when people say, oh, you're a paid stooge. I'm like, I'm not paid that well. But also, the arrogance of that statement has also struck me so many times, saying like the only reason people could disagree with you is because you're being paid to. I mean,
Yeah.
that level of kind of self-assuredness is very concerning in our politics. But one thing I think young people are put down and blamed for everything. You're lazy, you're entitled, you don't want to get a job, you don't want to do this, and all this kind of thing. And yet, every young person I've come across working right in so many different areas have full of passion, ideas. They want to change the world, whether that's naively in a good way or however. They want to get involved. And I can't help but feel that it's maybe my parents' generation and above that are very firmly slamming the door shut, saying, you don't know anything, you don't know what you're talking about. And then at the same time, screwing you over by making sure you can't get on the housing ladder. There's no economic development for you. There's no jobs for you. And yet that is then all your fault. I mean, in politics, the class divide was the great thing, whether you voted this way because you're from there. I think age is becoming the bigger divide. But which political party is doing anything for young people despite that growing divide? Because I can't see one. Everybody's screwing you off.
And I think that nowadays young people feel so underrepresented in politics that this actually, the right wing versus the left wing divide, it's not even the biggest divide we have right now. It's now the older generation versus the young one, where every generation thinks that they're the superior one. So the young ones are like, oh, but we're more informed. We know everything that's going on in the world because it's all in the click, on TikTok or on X. And so I know better than you. But then where it's like, oh, the older generation says, but you haven't lived life. So what do you know? So, and this, big divide into what people actually want from politics is different. I mean, the older people tend to be a little bit more conservative slash right wing, and nowadays people switching to reform because of their needs. And their needs are probably immigration control of the borders, and less crime, and all sorts of things. Whereas young people care more, in my opinion, about social justice, mental health, and climate change, etc. So that's where I think now is the biggest divide. Like, what's more important, you think? People coming from a different country trying to make a life here that you view as criminals, or is actually, being inclusive towards everyone in society is a little bit more important than that.
I think you're bang on, but I actually think, as you were talking then, I was like, oh, actually, the divide actually might be local versus international. I
Mm,
think older generations live a much more narrow, confined understanding of what the world is.
yeah.
And I think younger people, because we travel more, we move around the country much more. Like, think about it. Most people travel for university. They don't live in the same town to where they're from, which older people tend to have moved 3 streets away from your mom and dad. And if you moved 4 streets away, you basically emigrated. Particularly the town I grew up in, I think one of the families, I think they all live within 4 streets of each other. And that's like 4 generations. And I'm like, this is your understanding of what the world is. So your priorities of what you think the country should look like is defined by that. If you're around people from a different country, they're not just foreign to you. And I think that is actually the real divide between the young and the old. And it's not just that one's more advanced than the other, or I don't even think that one is better than the other. I think it's the fact that nobody talks to each other. Nobody talks. And if you do talk, it's just shouting at each other. That has to change. And I think
And
young people have to be as accepting of some older traditional views as older people have to be accepting of the newer ones. And I think there is a bit of an arrogance. Well, I don't know what you feel about that kind of stuff.
I agree with you 1000% because I think the best thing that we can do is probably find a balance. Because what we do with when there's a big divide, whether it's, in politics or whether it's in age, people in between are completely lost. They're drowning because they don't know where they are. They don't know what to do. So I think we need to find the balance because let's face it, the older generation probably they do know more locally. They do know more about their life experiences and stuff. But whereas with young generation, we are so well informed, but at the same time, some people aren't because 88% of young people only get their news from like online sources, whether it's social media or YouTube. This isn't a bad thing, but it kind of leads you to believe that probably most of it is clickbait. Like, are you actually going to go and watch the whole, 2 hour show and 2 hour program or the whole press conference? No, you're going to go to like 30-second video on TikTok or X and be like, oh yeah, this is what, everything is about. But in reality, you need to have a better understanding, a better grasp of everything that's going on to be able to form some sort of opinion in order for you to think that you're superior. So I think that's where social media has kind of also led to the biggest downfall of our generation. It has made us lazy. It has made us think, oh, just because, Trump said this for 15 seconds, so now I agree with him. But, never mind the fact that the rest of the 2 hour convention was absolute bollocks. But
Yes. Yes. I think you're right. But my favorite one is always like, oh, the Daily Mail's always this, or the Sun says that, and all all this. And I was like, well, that source that you're getting things from also has a bias. Like,
I had
everybody has a bias. And the people just, I always find it funny where people say, like, oh, I saw this and it must be right. I'm like, it's on the internet. I was like, listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. Like, you're making the same arguments that, your grandma does, and she reads the Daily Mail and you don't like that. And it's like, that people seem to think that, generations have got better at this. I actually think I'm with you on this. I think for social media and the internet in general has made us more complacent and just we've become more lazy in terms of finding things out. It's more, we don't look beyond the headline more than we ever have done now.
I know, and that's actually really sad. In a way, it can be good when you're trying to represent, like, for example, women in Afghanistan, and you see all these women standing out and protesting for them. In the Western world, I find that amazing and beautiful that we can do that. At the same time, on that same platform, we can view something that's so absolutely negative and so detrimentally bad for our society but because you think, oh, this one immigrant has done that, so now all of them are really bad. So let's spread the narrative that, anti immigration and all that, especially, young men turning really right wing nowadays is becoming a really big. And I'm like, and I'm just thinking, are you well informed in what's going on in our, country? Are you well informed about what politics are actually trying to say? Where it's like, so many people, as a young commentator, when you go on, especially when you go on talking about things that the audience isn't going to agree with you because, you don't
Oh,
think,
yeah, I'm very aware of how that happens.
honestly,
Just my inbox after every Friday.
no, I have stopped doing that. I have stopped checking what people have to say because it's like, 1,000 people don't like you, there will be someone who will. And I think it's so important to stick to your own truth and stick to your own opinion because I have heard so many times you're like, oh, but you're not that left wing, but you're not actually liberal. I was like, I am just that extreme woke that you see on social media. You
Exactly. Yeah.
know? And it's just last time someone was like, "Are you sure you're not a far right extremist?" Because I said that we do need to take control of our borders.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
What a radical idea. This is the thing. We live in an age of extremes. And I think because to get heard, everybody keeps shouting and everybody keeps being so kind of, hey, this is the worst thing that's ever going to happen. This is the end of the world. Britain is crumbling. And I'm like, it's really not. Because if you think it's bad here, look around the world. The world is blowing up. Britain is not blowing up. There is a fundamental difference. And it's that outrage culture for the clickbait, which annoys me, but also it is the fact that people don't realize that's what's being done to them. And
Yeah.
I have to admit, when you were talking about the kind of the anger of like say of young men, for example, my problem with the response to a lot of that is always, well, have you ever bothered to try and find out why they might be angry?
Yeah.
Like I see this all the time, and I really hate it so much because the Sarah Everard situation. Do you know, had a great moment where we could have talked about crime, making sure our streets are safe. We could talk about policing. We could actually have a proper conversation about trying to keep people safe. Do you know what we talked about? The right to protest. So far removed from it because of everything that happened, obviously, but also too many people took advantage of a situation to push their own agenda. Do not get me wrong, we have to talk about the kind of the gender impact of things, but running around saying all men are rapists is not helpful to a situation. And that leads to a closing down of a debate, which keeps people less safe. It infuriates me no end. The other example is also at the World Cup. Joe Lycett, what he shredded money, didn't he? And everyone's like, "Oh, isn't he raising awareness for gay rights?" No, he's not, because we talked about him shredding money, not gay rights in Qatar. Like,
Yeah.
we're not having the conversation people think we're having, and because of that, nothing gets fixed. So everyone just gets angrier. And therefore, that leads to more extreme positions until we actually get into a room and actually maybe trust each other that they're not a white supremacist or not all men are rapists or not all feminists, want to shave off their hair or what, that kind of ridiculous notion.
Mm.
We're never going to get anywhere. And I worry for your generation more than anything. I was just talking to a very good friend of mine from back north, and he was saying, yeah, he was looking at his friends who've just got kids. He was like, why? Why would you have children right now? Not just because of the international stuff, but domestically. The way our society is going is very concerning, and I, I, I don't know how to fix it. I don't know whether it's up to my generation to fix it, but I've got to say, Fariza, your generation have got some big tasks ahead of them. They really, I don't know where you're going to start, if I'm being honest. Sorry.
No, I'm just thinking because what you're saying is 100% like the truth. And I'm thinking about it. And it's like, I don't even know what the future holds for us. We either really need to start focusing on finding the balance because even nowadays, I consider myself to be, pro women's rights, but I don't even want to call myself a feminist anymore because what does that even mean? Because if you look at social media, if you look at it, feminism just means, oh, you know what? Actually, women are superior to men. But that isn't going to make young men feel more included in society. That's not going to make women feel, balanced out. It's going to hurt everyone. And that whole divide of like us versus them is really, really bad. And I don't even know what to say to that, like how we're going to fix it. I don't think it's up to anyone to fix, but other than just us waking up and realizing that, you know what? Yeah. This hatred, we're all fueled by hatred towards each other, whether it's a generational thing, a gender thing, whatever it is, we are all fueled by hatred and we need to fix that.
Mm.
We need to find balance in order to coexist.
Yes, I could agree more. And I think that starts by, like I say, we've got to start trusting each other. And we've also got to start calling out bad actors on our own sides of the argument. When somebody is stepping out of line, whether they be left wing or right wing, and using the issue to push an agenda, not dealing with the issue, that must be called out. And I am rather sick and tired of the left and the right being silent when their own side is abhorrent. I mean, your friends call out friends more than their enemies.
I agree with you because I mean, and as a commentator, I go on and I have to commentate about what's going on in the news worldwide or UK. And I am not afraid to say when, when the Labour Party has done something really bad, when they're not, addressing the issue that needs to be addressed. I'm not afraid to say anything. But it's also at the same time so tiring when the other side is never going to take any accountability for what the other side is doing wrong. Whether it's, spreading misinformation or having their own inner politics drama, if you know what I mean, the constant, so yeah, I'm not going to be a part of your party anymore, so let me just leave. And they think this is all fine. Or when Donald Trump, people have to fact check everything he says, and he just gets away with it. And people laugh it off. But in my opinion, it's not funny when you have a politician not knowing what he's saying. And it's like, take accountability and say, maybe, yes, you agree with him, you support him. Sure. Everyone's entitled to that. But at least be able to point out what he does wrong. And only then are we going to find the balance. Only because if you're strictly biased on one side, the other side's never going to resonate with you. They're never going to think, oh, you know what? They're smart people, and they understand when the president of the United States says something wrong and he needs to apologize. So maybe they're not all that bad. They're not going to get to that if everything, oh yeah, but that's just Trump and it's funny. Like, well, this is where we are in politics when we find everything funny. Like, come on, we're talking about the world, aren't we? We're talking about the beach.
I always find it funny. Armando Iannucci, the guy who wrote The Thick of It, says you couldn't do it now because parody is the real world. That he can't be any more extreme than it already is for it to be funny.
Yeah.
And he says that's not a good thing. There's the Harry Cole, who's the political editor of The Sun, is an old friend of mine, and he always said the greatest thing I've ever heard. The difference between The Thick of It and Westminster is nobody wanders around the thick of it going, oh, isn't this like The Thick of It? Like, it was to be like the hat. Now, and I'm thinking really, where do you think are the core elements then for your generations? Like, what do you think are the main policy focus? Like, obviously it'll be the bits of the economy, or is it education? Like, where do you think your generation is looking mainly for somebody to say, can at least fix this a little bit?
I think maybe housing, because if you look at, young people right now, people live with their parents now. People, flat share all the time, and it's totally normal. But there never been the same struggle as it is nowadays to be able to actually, move on and be an adult and, start a family, have kids, be in your own, house. Whereas, like, if you listen to the stories of our parents, it's like, oh yeah, I was 25. Like my mom was my age and she already had two kids. I'm like, she like,
Yes.
like, what are you talking about? And I think nowadays, I mean, the state of the economy is truly important. And housing, mental health, climate change. I know people say, oh, net zero doesn't mean anything or climate change doesn't exist. I tend to think that it does exist and we need to start, actually prioritizing our future because, this is going to be our kids living in the next generation.
Mm.
We need to actually start thinking about setting a path for them and what kind of life they're going to live. Because to me, and immigration is also a problem. And let's face it, we need to take control of our crime because I don't feel safe going on the streets of London at night by myself. Like, and I finish work every day at 10 p.m. And me and Samara were talking about how I don't even like to get the tube at night. It's scary. You have to do it. But it's like, I don't feel safe anymore because it's 10 p.m.
Yeah. I mean, my partner, I always make them put on their location if I know that it's late or whatever. It's not like a stalkery thing. It's like I need to know where you are because it's not safe. Even ridiculous at 10 o'clock at night in a major city that we both live in, we don't feel safe, or we don't feel safe for the people that we love. That I don't understand why it exists. It shouldn't exist in 2025. Don't get me wrong. Nowhere can be perfect. Crime is always going to exist. But I've never felt less safe anywhere I've ever lived, and I've lived in a lot of places,
See,
and this is like sorry, go on.
no, I'm so sorry, but I just mean like,
Hmm.
I think if you look at the news, if you listen to what people are saying and then blaming all of this crime on like the immigration system and all the people coming, maybe sure, but that's not gonna help if they constantly feel attacked. It's not gonna help make them feel loved and welcomed in this country. So they're gonna have to like, find a way to make money somehow. And I'm not, thinking of reasons to make it all okay. It's not okay. And, crime shouldn't be an issue. We shouldn't be having this conversation where two girls don't feel safe at night or you have to check the locations of people that you love, your friends, whatever it may be. It's crazy. But we have to start thinking about the core issues of this. where is this crime stemming from? Why are people so unhappy that they have to start committing crime every single day, everywhere you go? And it's not just the immigration system, it's the state of the country, it's the state of the world, state of the economy. Like, if you
Yeah.
actually look,
Wanted to use the old Bill Clinton. Sorry, I was going to say to use the old Bill Clinton quote. It's the economy, stupid. You know, people don't feel secure. Security breeds crime. So it's not a difficult thing to grasp. I think it was Blair that called it back to basics. In other words, go back to the root cause of things. Now, Blair, for all his faults, was very good at identifying a problem. Like he was at least pretty kind of getting to how he tried to fix things. Horrendous, in my opinion, but he was right on so many things. And I always use the example of a hands out, not a hands up culture. We were talking about that in 2000. We're still talking about it in 2025. That's not an accident. That's not politicians just saying things. That is a problem. And
that it,
I think you're absolutely spot on, Fariza, that we have to talk about why these things are happening as well as dealing with them. And we're not doing both. We just keep trying to clamp down on crime by putting people in prison longer. It doesn't work. It doesn't.
so, and I don't know what the main issue is, but honestly, in my opinion, and maybe not a popular opinion, but I think that my generation and the generation before me, we kind of romanticized crime, whether it's in, like TV shows and stuff. Have you noticed the increase of like criminal TV shows and what it's like Top Boy, Peaky Blinders, all sorts of things? And it's like, oh, that's so cool to be a gangster. And what you think, oh, you know what, people are smart is just entertainment. I'd like to think so, but that's not the reality. We have a lot of young people growing up and thinking this is the way of life. Look at them. This is crime, but look at the way they live though. They've got money, they've got, status, everyone's afraid of them. Maybe that's the way to do it. And it's obviously very silly and it's probably only responsible for like a small majority of crime. But I think we need to stop romanticizing crime in music and all sorts of entertainment and books. We need to start, tackling because it's not just, oh, this is fun post-Cold Wars. These are people dying and then women feeling unsafe. It's breaking people's hearts. It's breaking up people's lives. It's really terrible. We need to start focusing on main issues like, the government should really start talking about it. I know Keir Starmer was
Mm,
bringing up this neighborhood watch police thing, but
mm.
I don't know if that's going to be of much help, depending what kind.
My father always says the greatest thing I've ever heard. He says, "You want to see the rise of the Third Reich? Give a petty bureaucrat a high-vis jacket and a clipboard." Unfortunately, a lot of these programs, which are very well intentioned, get taken over by the wrong people, and
Yeah,
and you end up with this kind of snitch society, as it used to be called, this kind of like spying on your neighbors thing, which it doesn't really breed the harmonious society that people think that it might do. But I think you are right in terms of I think it was Andrew Breitbart who said that politics is downstream from culture. So once you fix the culture, once something is in the culture, it bleeds into your politics. And I think you're right about this kind of romanticization of crime. And then kind of, it happens to other people. It doesn't. And even if it does happen to somebody else, you should care about it because it affects your community. I
yeah,
think people forget a lot that crime affects an area and the area it suffers because of it. House prices suffer. That means, there's not enough investment because there's not enough investment. Businesses don't go there. So there's not enough jobs. There is a whole ecosystem built around this kind of stuff. Politics doesn't happen in a vacuum. And we have to get out of vacuum thinking. It's how we do that. I actually think it will take somebody with incredible political force to just force the country into it. Who that will be, I don't know. But it's going to take a lot of power and it's going to take a lot of gumption by the person to be hated, to really be hated, because to get this country back on its feet is no easy task. And it's unfortunately, because if we're doing politics by polling, which we seem to be, I don't see us being able to get out of the rut too quickly. And, I look at the next generation of leaders coming through, the kind of the ones, the backbenchers now, who I'd be the front bench one day. And I'm like, none of you across the board, I don't think have that strength of the character or skill to do it.
yeah.
And unfortunately, people who should be going into politics, who should be the leaders, don't even want to because of the culture.
It's really scary because if you look at the politicians nowadays, like you're saying, none of them have it in them. If you look at them, they're kind of all obsessed with their own, you know, with their own image, whether it's, social media or whether it's how people see them. It's like people don't want to break. If you look at PMQs, I'm sorry, every single time I watch it, I'm like, what is going on? This is like a pub tavern or something. People are like, hey, oh, this is what you do. This is embarrassing. You need to get a grip and start thinking about the people of this country, maybe, not about how, people perceive you. It's not important. If you're a good leader, you shouldn't care how people see you if you're actually tackling the issues that people care about. Or whether it's just thinking about how to get the right wing vote or how to do this, how to do that. You need to realize that people care about the future, people care about their safety. And we need to start tackling this. And looking at the politicians now, I honestly don't know who I have faith in. Maybe the future generation, I hope they're going to wake up one day and start rebuilding everything because this is just, it's not looking good.
Yeah, I always say that this is a moment where you could rebuild, but you could also rebuild something very bad as well. Like it could go either way. People keep thinking it can't get worse. It definitely can. And people think, oh, this is the worst it's ever been. No, it's not. And it can't get any worse. Yes, it can. But I think I like to think that we should get the word awake, not woke. Get aware
Yes.
so you're actually paying attention. People don't pay attention to what's happening until something big has happened or is about to happen. So, general election territory, everybody's involved. What happens the day after the general election? Nobody cares. Big things happen in between elections. And until we start paying attention to that, I don't know what we're going to do.
We need to find balance. And I think as long as well, we don't have balance right now, it's really evident. But once we do, we're going to be able to rebuild it in a good way. And I mean, like, what about politicians? Okay, even though the people didn't vote for you, people voted for someone else, you're in power now. Take the opportunity to listen to people who didn't vote for you. They're still in your country, they're still your people. You still owe it to them, a good leader, to listen to what people have to say. I understand that you can't listen to every single person and, make everyone feel happy. There's always going to be a bunch of people who don't like you. But you need to listen to the majority of people and what they're asking you to do. Otherwise, you're out. You're not going to make it. And until we find that balance in our society, until we find out, we are doomed. There's no way we're going to succeed in the political world, or, the new generation isn't going to succeed as leaders unless they find the balance between right wingers, left wingers, people in between, young versus the old, whatever it may be. People in between are literally like, they're drowning. They don't know where to go. They don't know where they are, where they belong to. So many people don't even vote anymore because they don't feel like they're represented. And like,
Yeah.
that's just crazy. We need to find balance. Otherwise, we are doomed.
I could not agree more. And I think that's a great moment to end on because we've got to find out. I really hope your generation could do it. And Fraser, please keep doing what you're doing. I think you are brilliant at this. I really, really do. I think there's a lot of people should be listening to. Don't get me wrong. We don't agree on solutions, but it's having the conversation and it's having a conversation with people that you don't agree with. That's the point. And please keep it up. And I will see you later on at work. But no, I will leave all of Fariza's details below. Please do check her out. And she has a great podcast also with Samara Gill, who I've interviewed here on Breaking Embargo, called Agree to Disagree. There's an episode with me on it as well. So you get all three of us together. But thank you so much for joining us. And I will catch you next time.